Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Today we're talking about Ballerina, the latest film set in the John Wick universe. It was in theaters earlier this year. And I'm happy to welcome a returning guest, cinematographer Romain Lacourbas. Romain, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you. I'm glad to be back.
I always love to welcome back a returning guest. A warning for listeners, today's conversation will contain spoilers. We're going to jump right in on this. Romain, how did you get involved with this project?
I actually got a call from one of the exec producer, Kevin Van Thompson, whom I shot the November Man with a few years back. And he was on this movie, and he gave me a call and said, "Hey, would you like to meet with Len Wiseman, because he's looking for a DP for his next movie to be shot in Prague." So I was, yeah, of course. So we did a couple of meetings over Zoom with Len. We had a great time over the internet. First meeting lasted an hour, and then the second one we were into a little deeper into the script, into visuals and IDs, and it lasted a little bit longer, and then I had the job.
For a project like this, are you expected to have some vision going into it, or like in those first meetings with Len, or are those first ones just to see if the two of you have chemistry even before you're looking at the script? How do those play out?
I would say the first meeting is really about chemistry, as you say, and really about he kind of tests me out a little bit, ask me, do you like to shoot with multiple cameras and stuff like that, which I actually don't. And I was very honest with him. And when he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you said no, because I much prefer shooting with one camera," so, that kind of thing. That was actually very fun. And yeah, the first meeting is really about, are we gonna connect, And he also, if I remember it well, he also starts sharing some videos he has made, because Len is really amazing. He makes, with small figurines and all, he shoot with his iPhone and a few cars, small cars, a few of the scenes that the way he wants to show it, and he puts sounds on it, he edits it, he puts sounds on it. And then just to see if it works,
Right.
And then he send it to you and say, "Okay, we talk a little bit about it. Do you like it?" And then he does sometimes a little bit of modification, but those videos are really, really precise. And then just about, okay, how we do it. So if I remember it well, I think he sent me the video when Eve, after the nightclub, after the S Club, when she escaped, she gets back in her car. Yeah, there was this video. And then she drives away from us. The car gets crushed and comes back to us, and the camera jips down. And I think he sent me that very first video, probably after the first meeting or the second, I can't remember. And basically, the second meeting is really more about talking about visual style, colors, shots and stuff like that. But the first one was really about chemistry. Yeah.
I want to talk more about the approach that, in working with Len, you guys came up with for doing this film, both in the specifics of how you're going to film it and sort of in the background, how the other John Wick films influence the decisions you make for this one.
It has to influence, because John Wick is such a new world with very strong visuals that we had, and also there are some things, sorry, spoilers, but there are some scenes from John Wick 3 that are coming back as flashbacks in Ballerina. So it's, in terms of storytelling, this story really happens between John Wick number 3 and number 4. So yeah, you have in a way to maintain a certain level of style, to refer to John Wick. And on the other hand, because it happens in a country which is Prague and then Austria, Verhofstadt, where even if a little bit of the action happened in New York, most of it happened in Prague, this gave us a little bit more freedom, because John Wick have never been in this part of, never been in this country. And so we chose a little bit of a different palette with less tubes, and less tubes on the frame all the time, a little bit less. So yeah, you have to take this into account, which is totally normal. And at the same time, we try to get our own visual universe.
Yeah, to your point, it's in a new city, and so you want it to have a different look, but it still has to
Yeah.
integrate with the worldview that has been established by the films. Or so that seems both simultaneously restricting and freeing. But I'm wondering how you felt about it going in and the kind of conversations you and Lynn had.
I mean, it was not restrictive at all. And also, Len was always very interested into new ideas. He, I mean, never he or nor the studio restricted any of the visuals we proposed and any of the visual, even during the shoot, where they were seeing dailies, and we never had, any complaints from anyone. So I felt it, to be honest, I felt really free during that whole shoot, which was great, obviously. I know it's not always the case. I mean, I know some big studios have a influence, or you have to use specific colors, or there's some kind of contrast that you cannot really do. But that was honestly not the case on this one.
So talk to me, Roman, about maybe some of the technical decisions you made, either what cameras you used, or were you going to shoot on digital, or again, just there's a lot going on with this. So I'm curious what you guys decided was the best approach.
I love film. Len loves film as well, but to be totally honest, if I had complete choice, complete freedom on a project, I would probably go for film on exterior day and digital for the rest, just because doing nights, exterior nights and interior nights with digital is it's much more comfortable, I think, just because the sensor really, you can push it too. On Ballerina, I think we even did a couple of scenes at 2,500 ASA, which is like crazy. And it hold up really well. But anyway, even though we have the kind of same taste on film for exterior day and digital for the rest, because that's a conversation we had pretty early on. We thought multiplying, going, it would have been too complicated on our schedule to switch from film to digital. So we chose very early to go digital. And then I usually like to go from, to start again and go from a blank page. So we compared the Venice 2 and the Alexa 35, which had just came out at this moment. And we did extensive tests with a bunch of lens. So it always lasts a couple of days, because you try to, just to save time, you try to, put all the lens you want to try on both cameras to be able to have an objective result, an objective test. And the production designer, Phil Ivey, which is amazingly creative, had already started to give us some of his concept arts for a few locations. And looking at this with Len, he had a very interesting reflection. He said one day, just before we saw the test, he said, we don't want an image too shallow, because we want to see the production design. And when he said that, I thought going large format was probably not the best idea. And then we saw the test, and I think we compared a couple of Hawk large formats, but not only, I can't remember, there were so many lenses, to be honest, but at the end of the day, we chose to go Super 35, because we were not after, again, a very shallow depth of field. And we really liked the Alexa 35 for not only for the dynamic of it, which is pretty great, but for the softness of the highlights, the organic feel of those highlights that doesn't look like video and that kind of look like film. It has something, not too, I don't know how to express it, but organic, I guess, would be the right word. And going anamorphic was always our preference. It's our very early conversation. So we went with the Hawk Classics, which we loved really, and that was our combination: Alexa 35 and Oak Classics. The other great thing is we're not into long lenses, so I think we shot most of the movie between the 28 and 45, I think, we kind of don't like, except for POVs or stuff like that. But most of the time, we would never go above 50, basically.
For someone who isn't familiar with all the technical specifics,
Yeah.
if I'm watching the film, what would I watch for, and what might I notice that? And then I say to myself, "Oh, they're using anamorphic."
Great question. Actually, one of the first things, especially when you use wide lenses anamorphic, and especially with this set of lens, you'll notice on each side of the frame some distortion. Most of the time on the side, really on the edges of frame, left and right. And you'll see that all the verticals are actually not straight, but they are slightly curved. That's one of the first thing. The other thing is the bokeh, which is if you are looking at a night scene, exterior night scene, and you have lamps, street lamps, or the headlights of a car far on the background, out of focus, because the focus is on much closer to us, is on the subject that is close to the camera. Then all those far lights at the very end of the street are not going to be round out of focus, but the bokeh is going to be more like oval, which is also one of the particularities of an anamorphic image. And then the last one for me, which is a little bit more subjective, but if you have a chance one day to compare a spherical image and an anamorphic one, there is one striking thing is that it's a little bit like if it gives you more volume in the image. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a 3D image, but it gives you the impression of much more volume and more separation between is close to the camera, the midground, and the far background. That would be for me the three main criteria.
Now, taking all of these decisions you made about the cinematography, I'd like you to apply them to the challenges of filming a highly choreographed fight scene, which, of course, is the earmark of this John Wick universe. But before you answer, I also want to do a callback. The last time you appeared on this podcast, we spoke about your work on The Witcher, the Netflix series. Now, I'd love to hear about similarities and differences between these two projects.
So the main difference, first of all, Witcher was heavily VFX involved, even for the fights, because when Geralt is fighting whatever monster, it means a bunch of guys dressed in green, and
Yeah.
and a lot of VFX behind it. The other thing that was very different is we probably shot The Witcher. I mean, some of the action scene on The Witcher were probably shot in a more classic way. And no offense to any of the director, obviously, but it's just that it's a different approach because it's a TV show. It's not exactly the same, I would say, for a feature. My point is for Ballerina, one of Len's favorite approach, one of, because it's not the only, obviously, is to make the shot last as much as possible, which means less shot in the edit, but also means that Anna must be able to do as much as possible, even though she had a stand double, obviously, but the idea was for her to do the maximum herself. And there's a few hidden cuts there and there, especially on the granite fight, but the main difference would be this, making the shot last as much as possible. And the other thing is, as I said earlier, most of the time we shot those fights with one camera, which it can seem a little bit crazy when you talk about fight scene, but if I remember correctly, pretty much all the fights without guns were shot with one camera. We started, pulling out 2 or 3 cameras when guns are involved, just because it means impacts on the walls, which means also, when you get an impact on the wall, it takes a lot of time to redo it and to clean the wall and to put it back as it was originally. So those are little details which you struggle with on a day if you don't have multiple cameras. So apart from those reasons, and even car stuff, I think, for instance, that same shot that I described before, on the street after the ice club, nightclub, that was shot with one camera as well.
Wow.
So it's it's a very different approach, and it's super exciting for a DP to be working with such a director, because in a way it is easier to focus only on one camera At least from that's what I think. It's much easier to focus on one camera than on three, three screens, three displays. And also, I had that fantastic camera operator, James Frater, who I tried to work with all the time, who has a very important and creative input, and who I obviously totally trust. So this we were that kind of a trio, Len, James, and I, trying to push it as much as we could. And yeah, so such a and it's funny because James Frater, my camera, was also on The Witcher, by the way. That's where I met him. And at the beginning of those big, all those fights, we looked at the choreography, which were already, prepared by the by all that stunt team, and they were filming it, editing it, putting sound on it, and so we could talk with them, and Len was sending his notes, and they were modifying it, and etc. etc. So James had to learn all the fight as much as he could to be able to, to remember where to pan, where this gun is gonna fire, or where this guy is gonna be hit, or that sort of stuff. So he could react and be on the right timing. And it took us a little bit. I mean, at the very beginning, I think the very first fight we shot was probably, I think it was the one on the basement, which lasted quite a few days. We were not completely sure with Len at the very beginning. Where are we gonna go, dolly? Are we gonna go with a crane? Are we gonna go? And slowly, because all the movie is pretty much fluid, either on tracks or on cranes or um, and the fight we were like, it took us a few days to find the right grammar for it, and we ended up using a combination of the Alien Revolution, which is some sort of Steadicam that James has and uses a lot, and handheld. But it was not, it was not like a real evidence at the beginning. We had to find a right way of telling of showing and shooting the fights.
And when you say the basement fight, I'm wondering which one specifically you're talking about.
Sorry, because yeah, of course there is so many fight that it's hard to keep. But it's a whole long fight, right? No, it's the one when she gets to Prague and she goes down the armory and she gets attacked. That's the one where the grenade fight happens, actually.
Yeah, that is an impressive bit of business. Let's go right into that because that's notable on this. I mean, it's in the previews. I can't believe that this is one of the ones you started with. Basically, grenades play a huge part of this entire conflict as she goes through the armory and is attacked by these assassins. Talk to me more again about how that came together and just the challenges of, I don't know, grenades being a big part of the filming.
That's another thing. The grenade was always on lens. So this one, I think he storyboarded it. He didn't make a video of it. Pretty much all of his videos were about cars. And this one, he storyboarded it, and then we got a pre-vis from the stunt team. And there was quite something. 'Cause when she puts the grenade on the guy's mouth, and then she closes the door, and the grenade explodes, it's actually really Anna, and there's actually really an explosion behind the door. The only thing is that the VFX did, augment and enhance all the debris and the smoke and the fire, obviously, but there was actually a real explosion. So we did a bunch, as you can imagine, we did a bunch of tests during pre-production to make sure it was safe. So I don't know how many stuff I saw exploding behind the door in that outside just next to the studio. But when the SFX found a process that was safe, completely safe, Hannah tried it on the day on the set directly, and it's there's an hidden cut. If I remember correctly, there's an hidden cut just before she gets she pushes the guy behind the door, and then obviously when she opens the door, there's another hidden cut. Oh no, sorry, there's no cut there because she then jumps on the next room. So there's only a hidden cut at the beginning, and that's it. And the rest of them, there's another moment where she used the whole grenade to fight with the guy on the last room, and then strangle him and just be, you know,
She's strangling him. She dives behind the table. He's on the
exactly.
other side and she's pulled a pin and she blows up.
So that same thing. That's one camera, two passes. So we
Wow.
did the first part of it and handheld. So the VFX had, to match those two shots. We just kind of found back the last place of James and from the moment she jumps behind the table, and then he tried to find back a similar place and distance with overlays and videos and all that for the second pass. But that's yeah, the secret of it. The cut is in the middle, just before the explosion.
Now that one's got to be visual effects explosion, right? I mean, there's blood all over the place. It's a mess, right? But you are doing something on set, like actually is going off, and then that's what they're using to model on.
Yeah, they hide a small cannon behind the table, and a guy presses the button at the good timing, and then you have all sort of red splash of, I don't know, that thing that looks like blood, and that's awful when you look at it. But it's actually sweet, and no, and it's a mess, as you say. 'Cause then again, the art department needs to clean everything if you want to get back to that shot. So it's the kind of thing that takes a lot of time. But it's really fun to do because you know that's another thing. A great thing about Len is that he wants to do as much as practical thing, as much as possible. You know, he's not against VFX or stuff like that, but the more we can do with practical stuff, explosion, weapons, knives, then he prefers that. And it's much more exciting for a cinematographer because you're trying to do things on camera as much as possible. Yeah.
Well, in the spirit of doing things practically, I want to go back and ask you some follow-up questions about that first kill, the grenade in mouth behind the door, because that is certainly very memorable, but it is actually the culmination of a fight sequence that I think begins with her throwing a grenade at a guy, that guy getting flung across the room. That leads into a knife fight. And then finally comes to the point where she gets the grenade in her mouth. And all of that was on a rewatch, extremely seamless.
The sure thing is that we shot everything in chronological order. Otherwise, it's really complicated for the other.
Yeah, I bet.
So we really try as much as possible in this kind of because this is all on stage, obviously, and for to preserve the set, we shoot in chronological order. That's one thing. Now, the moment you're referring to, which is kind of at the beginning, there's a few seamless cuts which I cannot really remember where they are because this fight was actually a little longer. I think she was fighting with a guy on the original version at the first floor, and then she was strangling him and put. Oh yeah, I remember now. She was putting him on the ground and putting a grenade under him, and then she was using him as a shield to protect her. And then the ceiling was exploding, and she was dropping on the level, on the bay on that.
Uh-huh.
So that part was reduced, and they kept only the grenade case. But all I remember, yeah, that's a little bit complicated because again, it was reduced. So the only thing I can tell you for sure is that there's a few seamless cuts and a few editing tweaks, and that it took us, I don't know, we stayed in this basement maybe 10 days, eight
Wow.
days,
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, it was not a super long shoot. We probably shot about 60 days total.
Oh, for the whole thing. Wow. Okay.
And there was a second unit that did all the car stuff with stunts for about 8 to 10 days, I'd say.
Okay.
It was actually a quite a hard schedule, just because for that kind of film, it's not 60 days is not a lot, you know.
No, not at all. Now, it's not a surprise that a big fight scene like that, you're going to shoot it on stage where you have control over everything. But I'm curious to talk about another set, which was fairly prominent, and that is the Prague Continental itself. What if that was on location? What of it did you bring into stage? And as a reminder to folks, she pulls up on a boat and goes in under this bridge to the entrance. And I'm just curious to hear more about the visuals for this set.
Yeah, thank you for asking because I really love this. I really love this set. So when she gets on the boat and on the on the dock, and then she enters from the outside, that's really in Prague. And we just found a place. It's actually a restaurant with that big round piece of glass that opens, and then that cuts to the lobby of the hotel, which is actually a real place. It's a museum in the real center in Prague, and I'll come back to that. And then that cuts to various hotel room. I mean, her room, and then Norman Reedus' room. And this is actually on stage. So Phil Ivey, great production designer, mentioned him before, he, because when we found this museum, which again is the lobby, it took us a lot of time to find the correct location because it has, it has a different feel. It's modern and it's all at the same time. You have kind of black and green marble on the floor. You have practicals that are a piece of art, and again they go again, they crosses past time with it's hard to say if they are from the 21st century or the beginning of the 20th century. Anyway, Phil Ivey took all this into account, and basically his main constraint was to build hotel room with big windows, just because the lobby has huge windows. So we wanted to stay into that. He wanted to stay into that vein. And then when you do that kind of set on stage and you have huge windows, very soon comes the question, okay, what do we see through the windows? So we study with the VFX the idea of LED screens, which was way too expensive for 8 days. It's probably a little cheaper now, I'm not sure, but at that time, because that was 2 years ago, it was too expensive. So we started the green screen option, but because there is so much, shiny floors, shiny stuff, shiny knives, everything is shiny in that bedroom. It would have been a nightmare for the VFX and also for us. And that's also something that Len hates is green screens. He much prefer having guys that would work on rotoscoping faces and stuff rather than using green screen. And I totally understand why. So we went to the good old Translight, which is just a huge picture that usually you backlight it for night stuff, and which can work. But the big issue, as you can imagine, is nothing moved. It's just a picture. So it's everything is stills. So we tested it and we were kind of with Phil and even Len, we were a little bit nervous, to be honest, because we knew it was not sure that this thing was gonna work. And then Phil got that amazing idea the day before the test, and he said, "What if we just put rain on those windows and it's gonna rain for the whole scene?" And we were like, "Of course." And I was like, "Why didn't I thought about it first?" Of course, that's genius. So for the whole scene, you have windows going down, all those big windows. And I tried to do, we had some moving lights on the floor that simulates the headlights of cars, and the street light and moving stuff, moving lights, just that would produce the life on the street at night. And then we went to the shoot the lobby a few weeks after that. It was February or March, I can't remember, but it was actually not snow. We were afraid that it would snow. That was in February, so we were a little bit afraid it would snow, and it didn't. But we still had to bring a lot of water to make, same thing,
Sure.
the continuity, which also meant we had to put a bunch of water. You usually at night stuff put water on the floor to get the shiny aspect of it, but we had to introduce rain on a few scenes just after that. So yeah, long story short, but it's just funny how, we ended up using an old process, which is the Translite, and somewhat got an amazing idea to make it look like real, and I think it works. I don't think that people see that it's fake. I don't know. I should ask, but I've never had someone coming to me saying, "Hey, this is a Translite." No, but maybe people do. I don't know.
I wouldn't have guessed it was a transite. And even
But
watching a second time when you had pointed out the possibilities, nothing jumped out at me. So I think part of it's the integration of those scenes, and that you get into an action sequence, in those hotel rooms that obviously captures people's attention. So I am similarly interested in your visual approach to Hallstatt, the Austrian town where the Eve character ends up chasing down this cult of assassins. It's a striking visual change. She's driving in along the road, the snowy road, and then we open up on the town. But as I understand it, you shot in the actual town. Tell me more about that approach and what you guys were accomplishing there.
That's also a town that Len has scouted using Google Maps a year before. I'm not kidding. And he wanted that action to happen there. So, because this is in Austria, it was a little tough budget-wise, but we ended up shooting only a few, I can't remember, but just a few days in Holstadt, and we cheated some of the action of her on the roofs and stuff like that on in another part of Czech Republic.
Okay, got it, got it. Something closer to home, but that matched the style you guys had established with that.
Exactly. Which means, bringing artificial snow and all that. But we shot all the white shot and as much of her running within those tiny streets of Hofstadt. We shot it there as much as we could. And there was it's a very interesting town. I didn't know that town just before, it's like super close to a lake. Like for instance, the very first shot, the drone shot where we discover Hallstatt as we follow her car. This is how the city looks. This is how this town looks. The only thing is that the snow is really enhanced in terms of VFX. They added snow, ice on the lake, and snow on the mountains, and snow on the roofs of all the houses of this town, like big time. But apart from that, that's how the city looks. It has something a little bit unreal. And yeah, so shooting there is really amazing because you have a lot of options in terms of chase, people chasing other people. You have just a lot of options because there's a bunch of stairs, narrow streets, roofs. It's just a great playground for an action scene. So yeah, there was also a scene that got cut, to be honest with you. At some point, the cars were supposed to cross the frozen lake to escape Eve. And she was supposed to chase them with ice skating. Anyway, that was an old version, and it became the beginning of it. Before her escape, it became the ice skate fight that was shot actually on a not in Hofstadt, somewhere else, but that became the ice skate fight in that small house when you park boats. I can't remember the name in English, but anyway. But so yeah, no, shooting in Hofstadt was really something, just because everything is there. We brought some snow. But luckily enough, there was already some snow on the far mountains and on some roofs. So we did bring some snow for anywhere the character gets in contact with the floor, because that's the most important. And then behind this, the VFX did all the works, but the rest of the work. But again, visually speaking, this town has this, it's just fun and great. It has his tone, which is it's a little bit of the fantasy world of the shape of the houses and the proximity of the lake. It gives a specific tone to the scenes, I think.
Roman, I was curious about, given the limited time you actually had on the ground in Hallstatt, those point of view shots from the watchtower, where the guy up there who calls himself the Eye is just looking through a round telescope at her. Do you do those on location, or are those things you're able to relocate again because it's a limited vision approach?
No, we did that on location just because this city is really like there's kind of a cliff at the south of at the north, sorry, of this town. You have multiple POVs. It's actually pretty easy to find high POVs.
Uh-huh.
So the guy on the tower, obviously we shot that somewhere else, and all his POVs through the telescope were actually shot on location.
Roman, what other scenes are favorites of yours that maybe we haven't discussed?
I really like the when she gets out of the nightclub, she escaped. So I'll tell you something else. Spoiler, sorry.
Spoilers are allowed. They were warned at the beginning,
Yeah, I
and they've
know.
had every chance to watch it either in the theater or at home by now. So don't worry about them. You tell
Okay,
us what
good.
you had going on.
That scene when she exits the nightclub, we shot it in two passes. So first the crane, the car escapes. Crane gets up in the air, and where we shot it, the car was actually disappearing under a bridge. And Len's idea was to because at that time it has to be shot like this just because I think they didn't have the budget to pay for a real crash at that time. So car goes away from us, escape under a bridge, and then you hear the sound of a crash. That was the original idea. You hear the sound of the crash, and then you see the car coming back from under that bridge as we boom down and pull back with Anna and the car. So that was Len's original idea. And I guess during the process, maybe they found the money, but they actually added the car. You see now the car being crashed, and which is great, and I think it works great. But it's funny how the original idea. I really love the fact that we were not seeing any of the crash, but just hearing it. And this took a whole night to film because same thing, only one camera. So camera jib up. The camera is actually on a crane, which is on a low loader. The first part of it is pretty normal. You just boom up. And then there was a whole rig of the car being attached to some wires. So we would be sure that the car would stop where it was supposed to stop. And there was actually a stunt being attached to the car and pretending to slide on the ground. So I can't remember how many takes we did, but that was extremely challenging. And, it's great to work with a director who goes so much into details, so much into specific. We redid that take until he was perfect, and it's really a blessing for a DP to work, with such director who they're passionate about what they're doing, and there's also very demanding with themselves, not only with the other, but with themselves. And we don't move and we don't go to the next shot until that first one is perfect. That's a great feeling for a cinematographer.
Well, Roman, what's your sense of Ballerina 2? Any rumors on set about a sequel to this film?
I don't know. I hope so, but I honestly don't know yet. But I hope so. Yeah.
Well, while we keep our fingers crossed on that, what else is next for you? Where else are we going to see your work?
I actually came back to France, my home country lately, so I did a TV show here, and I just did a much smaller movie, which is a thriller between two spy agency that actually really exists in here. So yeah, very different mood, different budget, different, which is great. Changing and doing different stuff is really the best.
Well, Roman, I'm going to watch for those projects. Really glad you could come back to talk about Ballerina with us. On that note, we'll call it a wrap. Thanks so much for your time. This was fun.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Listeners, I always appreciate your feedback. My email address is skid@belowtheline1word.biz. That's B-I-Z. Belowtheline.biz is also our website where you'll find more than 260 past episodes. So if you're a new listener, check out the catalog. Closing credits, thanks to Curtis Five for our music, John Wan for our logo, and to all of our listeners, I appreciate you. If you're a fan of Below the Line, consider a purchase. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. Other ways you can help. First, give us a positive rating wherever you get your podcast. Second, tell your friends about an episode you enjoyed, because that's how we gain new listeners. Honestly, if you're still listening at this point, I'd be hugely grateful if you shared a thought about this episode. All of that aside, whatever your engagement, the fact that you're still listening means a lot to me. Thanks again from Below the Line.